Fast, focused, and fearless. Here's everything you need to know this rush hour of February 12, Wednesday. I'm Riza Diaz. Kickstarting today's rush with Philippine officials resolved in terminating the visiting forces contract with the U.S. Now, despite the move, Malacanang says ties between the two countries will remain as is. Marisol Halili has a report.
President Rodrigo Duterte says U.S. President Donald Trump himself tried to save the visiting forces agreement, but the chief executive said he has had enough.
Si Trump pati yung others are trying to save the visiting forces agreement. Sabi ko, ayaw ko. One is that napakabastos ng Amerikano. Talagang sobrang bastos.
The president said the United States has insulted our sovereignty when it threatened to cut their aid and ban Philippine officials from entering the U.S. over the alleged illegal detention of Senator Laila de Lima.
A rag where you wipe the of the dog kung nakatapa ka ng mabaho. Amerikano, gano'n. Sumobra eh.
He even questioned the White House's agenda for bringing in unaccounted arms and weapons to the country.
Walang accounting if there are already nuclear arms inside the Philippines brought in by the Americans.
On Tuesday afternoon, Foreign Affairs Secretary Teddy Boy Locsin confirmed that the DFA had already sent the VFA's notice of termination to the U.S. Embassy. Malacanang said there is no need for the U.S. government's concurrence on the notice, which will automatically take effect 180 days upon receipt. But in a teleconference interview, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Clark Cooper said there will be a strategic meeting between the Philippines and U.S. about the VFA next month.
Of all the engagements, all the freedom of navigation operations, all the exercises, all the joint training, having U.S. military personnel in port, on the ground, on the flight line, does require that we have a mechanism that allows that. And that's why the DFA is so important.
But for Malacanang, it's a little bit too late.
Well, that has been overrun by the fact of sending of the notice of termination.
Despite this, the presidential spokesman said the relationship between the two countries continues to be warm. For News 5, Marisol Halili, we are One News.
Palace spokesman Sal Panelo also insisted that the decision to terminate the VFA took into consideration multiple factors. For one, the move was prompted by the U.S. government's supposed interference and disrespect on the Philippines judicial system. Recall that a U.S. Senate panel resolution had been introduced placing a travel ban and other sanctions on Filipino officials involved in the detention and prosecution of Senator Laila de Lima. Panelo also said that the president believes the country should be able to rely on its own in terms of national defense. For this, Philippines' own defense resources should be strengthened. Panelo also insisted that Duterte is no longer open to any appeal from the U.S. to save the VFA, nor will he accept any official invitation to visit America. But former DFA Secretary Albert Del Rosario warned that the termination of the VFA could have adverse effects on the rest of our military deals with the U.S. These include the possible interruption of the benefits we are receiving from the Mutual Defense Treaty, like the joint training exercises, military modernization, and calamity assistance.
There is a distinct possibility that an abrogation of the VFA would lead to the termination of EDCA, the MDT, and other international agreements, which would further serve to bring the palace even closer to being dominated by Beijing.
A defense analyst also believes the VFA termination will do more harm than good. According to military historian Jose Custodio, scrapping the deal may risk depleting the armed forces equipment and leave the country more vulnerable to attack. He says other deals like the Mutual Defense Treaty will also suffer.
Mapipilay mo rin yung US MDT kasi hindi ka makakapag-exercise, no, mahihirapan yan. Kailangan meron kang gagawin na isang document bago ka makapag-allow ng magkaroon ng exercises. So pag tinanggal mo lahat yan, parang ina-empower mo ngayon ang China, no? Sila lang makikinabang, ang China lang makikinabang lang dyan.
Senator Bato de la Rosa, on the other hand, regrets how the situation has spiraled out. Recall that President Duterte first signaled the VFA termination upon hearing the cancellation of Bato's U.S. visa.
Sinasabi ko kasi bothered ako nakukonsensya ako dahil I was the last straw. Tinanong nyo ako hindi kaya sumagot ako sa inyo.
The World Health Organization gives the 2019 nCoV ARD an official name, and that's coronavirus disease or COVID-19. Despite rumors circulating online, the health officials clarify the Wuhan virus is not airborne. JC Cosico has the details.
Marilyn sells goods near San Lazaro Hospital in Manila, where nearly 400 persons are being monitored for the novel coronavirus. And fearing that the disease is airborne, she opts to wear masks on a daily basis.
May mga bumibili sa amin na syempre galing sa loob ng ospital.
Both the Department of Health and the World Health Organization dismissed reports of nCoV being airborne, citing lack of evidence.
Our evidence is that it's still largely a droplet infection. So I'm not quite sure what led to this rumor.
Studies show that the nCoV is transmitted through droplet infection and through close contact with infected people. Health officials also say that nCoV is easier to treat than SARS and MERS-CoV. And despite exceeding the number of SARS cases, mortality rate for nCoV is still not as high as the previous pandemics.
Numerically, we are seeing more deaths, but if you look at the rates, it's much lower. This time around, we have 5 times as many cases already confirmed, 40,000. And we have just 1,000 deaths.
But the health department admits that it would be a problem if the virus mutates.
Now, the question is, to what extent is the mutation going to reach? Nobody knows. Yan ang malaking blind spot. And thus, people tend to entertain all these haka-haka.
The WHO and Chinese health authorities are scrambling to prevent the further spread of the disease, and various research institutions around the world are working on a cure. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
While experts are still working on a cure, more and more people are getting infected with the new coronavirus. Here in the Philippines, the DOH has tagged over 380 individuals as persons under investigation. 266 have been admitted to various hospitals, the majority of which are in Metro Manila and Central Visayas. 113 have already been discharged, while the number of confirmed cases remains at 3. More than 43,000 people have contracted the COVID-19 worldwide, and over 1,000 have already died from the disease. But recovery is possible since some 4,300 people have been cured from the virus. Now, here are the biggest stories from the dailies. The Freeman reports that the Cebu provincial government is preparing its own quarantine facility for repatriating Filipinos from COVID-19 affected countries. Cebu Governor Gwendolyn Garcia explains that this is anticipation of more passengers to be subjected to isolation and screening after the national government included Taiwan in its travel ban. Garcia added that they are now outfitting an evacuation center in Barangay Busay in Cebu City for this purpose. The Philippine Offshore Gaming Operators, or POGOs, owe the government 50 billion pesos in unpaid tax dues. Philippine Star reports that Senator Joel Villanueva, who chairs the Committee on Labor, is now seeking the temporary suspension of POGOs just until regulations are tightened. Discussion over illegal POGO workers in the country got a little heated over the Senate on Tuesday.
They are enjoying SWP. The fact that they don't have the TIN, the fact that they are not paying taxes, they are illegal. They are not paying taxes, they don't have TIN, then they're illegal. Is that yes or no?
Sir, if they're not paying
they are not paying taxes.
If the company is not paying the taxes, not properly withholding the the taxes from the salaries of the employees, then
they're illegal. So the 6,678 are illegal.
Kaya nga, there may be more.
And this from Filipino Star ngayon. ABS-CBN has 10 days to comment on the quo warranto petition filed by Solicitor General Jose Calida. Now, the Supreme Court set this deadline after the en banc session yesterday to give the media company enough time to explain its side. The SC directed ABS-CBN to comment on all of the allegations of the OSG, which includes abuse of privilege in relation to launching its own pay-per-view channels. But it looks like the show is not yet over for ABS-CBN. That's because Senate President Tito Sotto insists the network may still operate even after its franchise expires next month. Man Los Baños tells us why.
Should pending bills seeking the renewal of ABS-CBN's franchise reach the Senate floor, it has a big chance of getting passed, at least according to Senate Majority Leader Mig Subiri.
Maraming sumusuporta sa industriya ng pelikulang Pilipino, tsaka yung media, siyempre. So, marami tayong mga ano dito. You have Tito Sen, you have Bong Revilla, you have Grace Post, mother works in ABS-CBN. Then of course, you have Sani Hangara. So, ang daming sympathizers dito.
Senator Nancy Binay, despite her family's past issues with the network, voiced that she would vote for the network's franchise renewal. She said it's not about her but about freedom of information. But the Senate is powerless at the moment as they await for the lower house to deliberate on ABS-CBN's franchise. That's why Senate President Tito Sotto now wants to have a meeting with the leaders of the lower house. But he clarified that the network can still operate beyond the franchise's expiration on March 30.
As long as there is a pending franchise or pending bill for extension of franchise, they are deemed extended. They can still operate.
He said that ABS-CBN will only cease operations if it fails to renew its franchise by 2022. But Senators Coco Pimentel and Franklin Drilon think otherwise.
Dapat may legal basis. If that was without legal basis before, I would not encourage it.
No, they need a franchise, so if there's no more franchise, they cannot operate.
The Senate said that the fastest time it would take to pass ABS-CBN's franchise bill is 3 weeks. Over at the lower house, Vice Chairman of Legislative Franchises Antonio Albano assured the network that its operations will continue, as only the Congress has the power to render or terminate franchises.
We would like to send that position to the Supreme Court so that we will be heard.
For Congressman Jericho Nograles, it's up to the National Telecommunications Commission if it will allow ABS-CBN to still operate. But for House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, one of the closest allies of President Rodrigo Duterte, who doesn't want to renew ABS-CBN's franchise, ABS-CBN is supposedly better off soul-searching for now. Reporting for News 5, Mean Los Baños, we are One News.
Meanwhile, President Duterte had other reminders for public service workers, particularly to personnel of the Bureau of Fire Protection. During the turnover ceremony of new fire trucks and other equipment, Duterte told fire officials not to take advantage of the vehicle and only use it for real emergencies. However, the president says when it comes to responding to criminals, fire workers don't need to rush.
Yung pasyente mo, kung mamatay talaga yan. Hindi na dadala yan sa bilis ng ospital. Lalo na yung may mga sakit na baril, lalo yung mga kalaban pa, huwag mong lagyan. Magkuha ka ng piyo, huwag mong ilagay sa bumbero ko. It's a waste of. Tapos mabubuhay pa yan. Balik na naman sa trabaho.
Let's fast break now to Sports Brush. Host Philippines absorbed a painful loss against Thailand yesterday in the 2020 Badminton Asia Manila Team Championships opener. The Thai team, composed mainly of SEA Games gold medalists, won by seizing the first 3 singles matches. Our doubles players tried to put up a fight but ultimately failed in the hands of the foreign team, who took yet another sweep. Although the match was already decided, the Filipino shuttlers still opted to play the last 2 doubles matches that also ended the way they started, with crushing defeats. But the Philippine team hopes to recover today as it faces Indonesia later at 10 in the morning. And that's how the day is shaping up to be. Join us again next time for another round of Rush. I'm Riza Diaz. We are One News.